What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Talking Halos. I'm your host today, Jared Timms, and I'm joined alongside my co-host, my partner in crime, Nate Green. Nate, how you doing?
Doing well. How about you, buddy?
Doing well? Just well, right?
Yeah. Yes. Happy Thanksgiving. We're right there.
Yes, we are. We are definitely. You kind of beat me to it. I was going to say thank you to all the listeners. Really do appreciate you. I'll get to that in a second because I do want to say thank you. Big news, big major league news. LA news broke last night after we recorded the podcast. And we'll talk about it here in a second. I don't want to get into it too much. It's not going to be a crazy discussion, or anything like that. You guys probably won't like what I have to say about it, but I definitely want to talk about it because I think that there is something to be said about what the Dodgers are doing. But first and foremost, thank you so much for watching and listening here at Talking Halos. We really do appreciate it. Happy Thanksgiving to those of you guys who do celebrate it and watch us. We really do appreciate you guys taking the time on Thanksgiving. If you're watching us here on Thanksgiving, Black Friday, whenever it is. Um, for watching us and listening to us. We really do appreciate it. So, again, thank you so much. Follow us on all our social medias, X, Instagram, and Facebook. Follow myself on X or Blue Sky at Jared_Timms. Nate on X at Jared, not Jared underscore Timms. It's at Nate Green 34. And give us 1 second to pay the bills. All right, Nate. Let's get it rolling here. I did, mention it a couple minutes ago about I guess we can call it the elephant in the room, what the Dodgers are doing. I didn't want to take too much of this podcast to do it. I know that, if it's just you and I, we can, kind of do it. If we have other people on, Derek, Taylor,
Yep.
anybody, I feel like the conversation is going to get really deep. And I don't want to get into it very, very deep because we're not a Dodgers podcast. I really don't care about the Dodgers. Yeah, congratulations. They won the World Series, but let's talk about it just a little bit. They signed Blake Snell to a big contract. Uh, do you like what they're doing? I wish it wasn't the Dodgers that were doing this because it'd be a lot more fun to, see it. But do you kind of like what the Dodgers are doing here? Do you wish other teams copied what they were doing?
I don't think anyone can copy what the Dodgers are doing. I think a lot of people are like, "Oh yeah, it's pretty easy," but like the Dodgers TV deal is billions and billions and billions of dollars. I think it's 3.9 billion dollars. 3.9 billion.
It was more than
No
that.
other team
Yeah.
major league. Is it more than that?
I thought it was like 8 billion, but
It,
I don't
it,
know.
it could be, but at minimum, it's 3.9 billion. Um, no other team in Major League Baseball has that. Um, the Dodgers owners are one of the richest groups of owners in Major League Baseball. I think they're in the top six or so. Obviously, Steve Cohen is the richest, and then it goes down from there. But yeah, so I don't think other teams can get to what the Dodgers can just from a pure money standpoint. What they're doing to put the best team on the field as possible. I mean, like hats off to them. That's the goal, right? The goal is to put the best 26 out there every single series and win a bunch of games, and they do that very, very well. So it's hard to be upset. The one thing that like really sucks is like it feels like they're never going to run into like that cap space that the Mets have seen the last couple of years, where it's like, hey, we spent a bunch of money, we've done what Major League Baseball has told us to do, we spent our money, um, and we got players, like we got good players, but now the Mets are paying double tax than everyone else. The Mets are losing draft picks, moving spots, losing all these things, and the Dodgers are like, oh, we're actually under the Mets cap, and it's like you're not really under the Mets cap. You just deferred the money so far in advance that like it doesn't really count towards this year. So that's the only thing that really sucks about it is it's like we should be penalizing the teams for spending too much. If that's the way we're doing things, we're penalizing teams for spending X amount of dollars. Like it should count for what they're spending, not like, oh, hey, they spent this here and this here, so it actually is only worth $3 million. And it's like, oh, okay. So that's the one thing that's really frustrating about the whole thing because not every team can afford to do this either. So
Yeah, and for me, I don't have an issue with it. I think everybody's saying it's bad for baseball. I don't think it's bad for baseball. I think on the contrary, it's good for baseball. I think players are getting paid, and I think that more teams need to be able to pay these players. I know that some teams can't. You just mentioned it, but I think that more teams should be able to pay players as well as develop players. Like you should be able to do both. You shouldn't just be able to, like the Angels are doing, either buy a team on the field or develop a team on the field. Like we see Rays do. We see, certain teams just go out and develop and don't spend any money. You see certain teams that just go out and spend a lot of money. It's nice to see and I'm not by any means turning this into a Dodger podcast, but it's good to see a team actually do both and do it well. Now on the Angels side of stuff, a lot of fans are very upset with this and hoping that rules get changed and things like that. And that was my initial thought as well. But then I took a step back and I thought about it, and the Angels could have done this. They really could have. This is all I'm going to say about this, and we can get on to Angels, actual Angels news and rumors and things like that. But the Angels could have done this. I mean, they had Mike Trout in his prime, playing very good baseball. They had Shohei Ohtani in his prime, playing very, very, very stupid good baseball. And they could have extended Shohei Ohtani and deferred money as well. If they really wanted to do that, they could have done it. What was stopping them from at least offering that up? And we don't even know if they offered it up or if Ohtani ever brought it to the Angels. But Angels could have done something very similar to this and gone out and signed, players and signed, and continue to develop. And they could have had, Zach Neto with Trey Turner, or, they could have had Logan O'Hoppe, maybe play the outfield because they signed a big name catcher, traded for this big name catcher. So, yeah, I'm not, like I said, I'm completely indifferent. The Angels could have done something like this. They had the two best players in baseball for quite a long time. They couldn't build around them. You're seeing the Dodgers do it, and it sucks to see the Dodgers do it. But like I said, I'm not. It's indifferent to me at this point, unfortunately. So if you're watching us on YouTube here, go ahead and leave a comment down below. Let us know what you think. I know everybody's going to hate these opinions because it's Angels podcast and everything like that. But I also want to kind of be real about it because I think it's good for baseball. I don't think it's bad for baseball by any means. I mean, let me rephrase that. I don't think it's necessarily good for baseball, but it's not bad for baseball by any means. And the Angels had two of the best players in baseball for 6 years. Two of the best players in baseball for 6 years, and they couldn't put a winner on the field around him, and they didn't want to build around those two guys. The Dodgers just wanted it more than the Angels. So it sucks, but let's get on to some Angels rumors, Angels news here. Let's talk a little bit about the starting rotation here. We assumed that Reid Detmers was going to be in the starting rotation. Perry Minasian in his interview today talking about Yusei Kikuchi came out and said the starting rotation as Kikuchi, Soriano, Hendricks, and Tyler Anderson. He did, in a sense, kind of leave out Reid Detmers, which is a little bit surprising to us, but also, he hasn't been the best pitcher, and he, needs to definitely take the next step forward. We've seen him be a very, very good pitcher. We've seen him be a top 5 pitcher in all of baseball for a month and a half to start the season last year. He was a very good pitcher, just couldn't see it continue. So I want to get your thoughts on it. I want to hear if you think the Angels might, pull a move for another starter.
Yeah, I mean, this is such an Angels thing to do. Let's be honest. Like, let's call up the kid early. Let's hope he does his job. Oh, he's not quite ready. He sucks. Well, then we're just gonna sit him up and down, up and down, up and down, like they did with Joe Adell. They've done this with Reid Detmers. They did it. You can go all the way back with all the guys. They've done this with Dallas McPherson. I mean, you can go through all the guys that they've done this to, and it's just Brandon Wood. Like, it's unbelievable. They've had opportunities to trade some of these guys because they get really high in prospect ranks, and they say, no, we're not going to, and they keep them, and it ends up being the way it is. Do I think they're going to go get another pitcher? I think you have to move a pitcher first. Like, if the Angels are going to go out and get a Shane Bieber, a Max Fried, even if it's not to that caliber, which I would think it needs to be with the upside of Reid Detmers, like you said, Reid Detmers with his 1 month in baseball, he was one of the best pitchers in baseball, I guess. I don't know. He was in the all-star consideration after 1 month of pitching. If you're going to go out and get a low ceiling guy, it's like, what are we doing? Like, we might as well just run Detmers out there and hope that he hits his ceiling, because if we'd rather just trade him for like a Lance Lynn or a Kyle Gibson, it's like, what? Like, that's a waste of a move. But if you're going to go out and get a guy who's got a huge ceiling, like has a chance to be an all-star and be a Cy Young guy or whatever, like, sure, totally different story. But I would be curious to see, are the Angels willing to trade Reid Detmers? Like they said they want to go out and get a more offense. They want to get a left-handed hitter. Cody Bellinger comes to mind. I know that's something we'll probably talk about here in a minute, but Cody Bellinger comes to mind. There's still a hole at third base. You could go get a young guy like a Nolan Gorman. Um, there are some other guys that you could go after, but Nolan Gorman's one of my favorite guys. Um, would Reid Detmers be interesting to the St. Louis Cardinals? Like, are the Angels willing to move him, or are they just going to sit in this like, hey, you don't have a guaranteed spot, but we're not going to we're not really going to do anything with you. You pitch bad in spring training, well, we'll send you down, call you back up, and play this stupid game that they play with some other guys, and it puts them back. Like I think it's part of the reason the franchise is where they're at is because that they've messed up mightily with their prospects. The one guy that they actually made sense and made a good move on was Brandon Marsh. Like you saw his ceiling as an Angel was not going to be incredibly high. He was going to be a 250, 270 hitter with 10, 15 homers at max. And they go out and trade him for Logan O'Hoppe, who the Phillies had no place for. I mean, JT Realmuto was signed for long term. So like that was a perfect deal for the Angels. And I'm wondering if they're thinking about doing something similar right now with Detmers and either a third baseman or a center fielder.
Yeah, Detmers isn't a free agent until 2029. They were able to push it a year back by not bringing him up late in the season this last year, which maybe end up being a decent move. Maybe that killed some good things going on with Reid Detmers and the Angels. I don't know if it helped hurt the relationship at all, but that definitely did happen. He still has two major league options. He hasn't been a bad pitcher for the Angels, minus last year where he was, he started off extremely well and then really just hit a wall. He was a 2.2 win pitcher in 2022. He was a 2.5 win pitcher in 2023, then digressed to a zero point 0.7 win pitcher. As a starter is not very good by any means. So there's a lot of upside there. The trade potential is crazy through the roof. I don't. He has the potential to be a number two. Now, can the Angels get him to be a number two? That's the biggest question for me. And if history repeats itself and the track record is true, then I don't know if I really think the Angels can make him into a number two starter. He has the upside to be, it could very well be, that ace, Reid Detmers, Yusei Kikuchi, Jose Soriano as, four guys, and then maybe a Caden Dana as a fifth guy down the road. I don't know if the Angels can ever get him to that point though. That's my thing. Like we've seen him be very, very good, and we've seen him be very, very bad. I just don't. I don't know. So maybe trading Reid Detmers is the right move, and maybe the Angels trade him for. You mentioned that left-handed bat, which we can get into here in a second. And all of a sudden, if they can get that big left-handed bat, maybe it shows a guy like Roki Sasaki that the Angels are very interested in winning, and all of a sudden, the Angels have their ace of the future. I don't know if that's going to be the case or not, but I do think that I don't think they're necessarily out of the Sasaki sweepstakes by any means. I'm sure we'll talk about that in the coming weeks because he's not going to sign for a couple weeks, after the New Year's, what it sounds like. So we'll kind of wait and talk about that. But I mean, just I wouldn't rule it out by any means. With that being said, the Angels are indeed looking for a big left-handed bat. Perry came out and said it. Um, Cody Bellinger makes a lot of sense. We've mentioned it a lot in the past. The free agent market for left-handed bats is not ideal unless you think you're going to go sign Juan Soto, which I just don't think is going to happen. I actually don't think it's not it will not happen. The Angels are not going to go sign a guy like Juan Soto. I mean, there's guys out there that I'm sure
You
they
sat
check.
here and tried to convince me of that.
I mean, they could. I mean,
You just said
a
it's not happening.
a 0.0%, it's a 0.001% chance. I mean, just from what it sounds like right now. I mean, there can always be a mystery team for Juan Soto, but I just don't see it happening right now. Crazier things have happened though. You never know with Artie Moreno and the money and how he's willing to dish it out. Especially with deferrals. I mean, maybe the Angels can defer Juan Soto's money to 2050 or something like that. So, but yeah, if you look at the free agent market, it's not very good. I mean, you got a guy like Jock Peterson, Josh Rojas, Michael Conforto, Jesse Winker, but that doesn't really fill any holes when you think about it. Those guys don't play a position, minus Josh Rojas, but that Josh Rojas bat
He
isn't a
doesn't have any
yeah,
power
he's not it's not a very good bat. It's a spot that, very Kevin Newman like. You can put him at second, you can put him at third, you probably can put him at short a little bit. Um,
he can
Jesse
play the outfield
Winker,
too
yeah, I mean Jesse Winker can play the corner outfield in a pinch. It's more of a Jorge Soler type of guy. So
at
I don't
best.
know if this left-handed bat market on and the free agent side of stuff is where the Angels look. I think they look, you know, maybe on that Cody Bellinger side of stuff. And I don't know if you have any other thoughts, anybody else that you can think of off the top of your head that makes sense for the Angels. But yeah, give me your thoughts here, Nate.
Well, you said Conforto can't play. Like Conforto's not a legitimate. He's a below average defender,
Mhm.
and he has to play a corner. The Angels need a center fielder. Like Trout's got to move to a corner, and you have Ward or Adele, whatever route you want to go there. You could keep Ward and trade Adele. You could keep Adele and trade Ward, whatever. But like, you're not needing to go get a guy that's going to cost that much money. Conforto Jock, I would assume Jock gets close to what Soler makes, somewhere in that 12 to 14 range, which is too much for a guy who can't play the field. So that's like the big issue with most of the guys that the Angels are interested in, I guess, or people that's names are getting brought up. Bellinger makes the most sense because he fits a huge need of um, playing center field. He can also play first base if Shanuel like doesn't take that next step, you know, eventually. Hopefully Shanuel continues to get better and we don't really have to worry about that. Bellinger can stick in center for, 3 or 4 or 5 years and move to a corner if he needs to or whatever. Um, I think one guy that isn't on your list that should be is Jorge Polanco. I know he's coming off a really down year in Seattle. Seattle hasn't really had too much offense. I think a lot of it is like due to the park. He hits left. He technically is a switch hitter, but he hits left-handed. He's got some juice. He could hit 15, 20 homers. He could play second base. Would fit a need of the Angels just because you can move Rengifo to third. I know Rengifo's not the best fielder, but it just allows you to have options there. And then again, the guy that I brought up earlier, I think Nolan Gorman has to be someone you at least talk about. Like call St. Louis and see what the asking price is. I know maybe that they're like, hey, we'd rather trade Nolan Arenado and put Gorman at third or whatever, but like they did the same thing to Nolan Gorman that the Angels did to Reid Detmers. They sent him down halfway through the year, kind of left him down there, brought him back up late, and just said, you know what, he hasn't really figured it out. I know the Angels haven't had great success at really turning guys around, but who knows? Maybe Mickey Moniak had that one really good year after coming over from Philly. Maybe Gorman can do something similar to that. He has position versatility as well. He can play second, third, left-handed bat. I think there's some upside there as well. So those would be the two guys that didn't get mentioned that would actually make sense from the Angels' perspective. But those are both one's a trade and one's a free agent.
Yeah, and I'm just looking through left-handed bats right now on Fangraphs. I mean, there's a couple other that we didn't really mention. Alex Verdugo, not a great bat by any means. And then I know, and then you look at the trade, you look at like a possible trade market. Maybe somebody like Jake Cronenworth, Jesus Sanchez, Cody Bellinger's on that list, obviously. A JJ Bleday or Ryan McMahon.
I don't think the A's are going to
And
move Bleday the way that he played for them.
it's such a
McMahon would
tough
be a
market.
possibility.
It really is. It's
But
such a
his
tough market.
contract is awful. McMahon's contract is awful. I don't know if he's a legitimate third baseman. Maybe he could play second, maybe he could play third, but it'd be rough.
I don't know.
Um,
I'm throwing out names that hit home runs last year. Really, like
Jake
if you
McCarthy, maybe. I don't
yeah.
know what McCarthy ended up with home run wise, but um,
Yeah, it's just a very tough market. So I mean, if you're watching us here on YouTube, go ahead, drop a comment down below. Let us know if there's anybody that we're missing out on. I know Babe Ruth is not a free agent, but that would be really nice as well. But yeah. So on to the last bit of news here for the Angels. A little bit of bullpen news. It'd be a fun bullpen if they could pull this off. I don't know what a contract would look like for him because he's getting a little bit older. But Angels linked to Aroldis Chapman. Kind of interesting name, somebody that we've wanted for a little while, not just because of the velo. Prior to even getting Ben Joyce, though Ben Joyce and Aroldis Chapman in the back of the bullpen would be a lot of fun. Um, Aroldis Chapman, man. Like, what do you think? What do you think a possible contract might look like for him? Do you think he fits the mold? Do you think he even comes to Anaheim? I mean, I don't know.
I think it's about 8.5 million. I know that's going to sound like a lot for some people, but I think that's kind of what his market has been. He's been a pretty reliable guy for the last 5, 6 years. I know he had that one incident with New York, but for the most part, he's been pretty reliable. He's been pretty good. Uh, he was good for Pittsburgh this last year when they needed him to be. He's been good with Texas. He's been good with Kansas City. Like, I don't know. He's just been very good for the most part whenever they've been able to run him out there, no matter what his velo is, whether it's 104, whether it's 98. Um, do I think it makes sense for the Angels? The one thing about Aroldis Chapman is everyone always checks in during July with him. Like he's a guy that no matter what, July comes around, if your team is in first place or last place, if your team is willing to make a move, Aroldis Chapman's name usually gets brought up just because it's like, hey, he's a lefty, he throws hard, he can get outs late in the game, he can get outs kind of whenever you need him to. What would it look like for an Aroldis Chapman trade? And I think there's a lot of those. That's kind of the way that Perry likes to do things. If he's going to go 1 year deal, is get a guy who's going to be a hot commodity in July, which typically is the hard throwing righties, maybe a hard throwing lefty that can get outs late in the game. But I mean, you've seen it with Estevez, you've seen it with Garcia. Um, I'm blanking on who else they've done it with, but they've done it with a couple guys over the last couple of years. Um, Lopez was a guy that they traded for, but he also would have been a guy that would have made sense. So yeah, I think he makes sense. 8.5 million is kind of, I don't know. It's not a crazy amount for what he brings, but it's like, do we have 8.5 to spend on a seventh inning reliever right now? I don't know because you already like. I know people are going to hate that I'm saying this, but like Ben Joyce is going to be at the back end of the game. Robert Stevenson makes way too much money to not pitch at the back end of games. Way too much money. He's going to pitch in the seventh or eighth inning. So, do we need to add $8.5 million to this bullpen to pitch late in the game? I don't know. I think maybe Kyle Finnegan gets somewhere in that 5 to 6 range. Maybe he gets into that 7. He could be a little bit cheaper, which is another guy the Angels been linked to. So I don't know. And with the bullpen is so volatile. Like you always love to bring up. It's like guys could be one of the worst relievers in baseball. Paul Sewald was so bad last year. Year before, he was an all-star, hot commodity at the trade deadline. Like the Angels might be able to sign him for $4 or $5 million, and he comes back in and he's one of the better back end relievers in baseball. And it's like, hey, we're not in it in July. Like Sewald gets us something, or hey, we're in it in July, and Sewald's going to be, you know, a big piece to that bullpen that's going to make a run at the playoffs. Obviously, I don't think that second scenario is likely, but I mean, there's always the what if, right?
Yeah, for me, I don't see Aroldis Chapman hurting this team. In fact, I think he helps quite a bit, especially with the development of Ben Joyce in the back of the bullpen. I think that he brings a lot to that table. I mean, somebody who's pitched in World Series games, someone who's pitched in big, big, big games, to kind of not in a sense mentor, but yeah, to really mentor Ben Joyce into that closer's job would be, a heck of a lot of fun. And I mean, somebody that we've, you know, talked about before in the past. And this is also something we talked about before, and you just brought it up. Robert Stevenson's getting paid a lot of money to not throw in the back end of games. He's not somebody that has thrown in the back end of games a lot. You could really benefit by having a Aroldis Chapman type of guy to, help guys, pitch in high leverage situations and learn from those situations. So Fangraphs has him
Do we
one for
think
10.
do we think he is that guy though?
I think that yes, I think that he is at a point in his career where yes, he pitches, but I think that also a 15-year vet will offer his advice as well. I mean, we would you have thought Hunter Strickland was that guy? I mean, we talked about to Ben Joyce about it, and he said, "Oh, Hunter Strickland was the big guy in the back in the Angels bullpen that kind of led the bullpen." I wouldn't put Hunter Strickland's name on that list by any means, but you know you never know what.
Hunter Strickland didn't also have the incident in New York where, he basically said, I'm not gonna, if you're not gonna pitch me, I'm not gonna play and leave when my
Correct.
team's going to the playoffs. Like there's a little bit of an edge to Aroldis Chapman that the Angels are missing, obviously, because he is a little bit of a hothead at times. But like, is he a guy that's really going to mentor? I think that's the question that needs to be answered if you're going to bring in a guy like Aroldis Chapman for 10 and a half million dollars.
And it's not even like
Because,
he's going to
like I
just
said, that's a
mentor either.
lot of million.
He's still going to be a good pitcher though too. That's the thing. Like like yeah, the velo dropped last year a little bit, but he's still got it. It's somebody that, like you mentioned, is going to get calls in July. So on a 1 year deal, like I'm not horribly upset about that because you're going to get something back for him. So I don't know. Even if he isn't a mentor guy, again, which I think he would be one of those guys because he's been around the league, he's been in big postseason games, he's been a World Series champion, I think. Um,
Yes.
yeah, he was there. So
Well,
the
and you know who the Royals got for him 2 years ago?
the Royals got for him.
Hmm?
It wasn't like Cole Regan's, was it?
Oh yeah, it
Was it
was. That
Regan's?
was the trade. It was Reagan's
Exactly.
for
Well,
Chapman,
I mean,
and that ended up getting the Rangers. He was a big piece to help them get to the World Series. He was that guy to pitch in the eighth innings,
exactly. That's what
sometimes the ninth if
it's.
they needed him to.
Yeah.
And the Royals get a frontline guy, a really good number two pitcher out of it. Who, yeah, there was a lot of like, what if with Reagans, and Kansas State turned him into something good. But like, I mean, anytime you're getting a high probability lottery ticket, like you might as well take it, right?
Yeah, I mean the Angels were able to do that last year with Carlos Estevez. Oh, and they got two high ceiling lottery tickets as well, and a possible Cole Regans in either Sam Gary or George Clausen. So yeah, I think it's worth whatever you're going to pay him. I don't think I would be upset about paying him 10 million, $11 million by any means. Less would be great, but wouldn't be upset about it. So, if you're watching us again on YouTube, drop a comment in the comments section down below. Let us know your thoughts on Aroldis Chapman as well. If you're not, go ahead and tag us on X as well. You can, look us up there. Nate, any final thoughts before we let everybody go?
If you're going to spend 10 or 11 million in the bullpen, do not go cheap offensively. This offense has been very bad. The starting pitching still needs a little bit of work, especially if you are saying that Reid Detmers is not going to be in the rotation and you are penciling in guys like Tyler Anderson and Kyle Hendricks. Like, do not go cheap in other places and spend 10, $11 million on a relief pitcher. That's a recipe for another 65, 70 win team. So that would be my biggest advice.
My final thought is, don't don't not think the Angels aren't in on Roki Sasaki. That's gonna be my thought for the next couple of weeks. I'm gonna speak it into existence. So for all of us here talking Halos, again, happy Thanksgiving for those of you guys who celebrate it. Happy Black Friday for those of you who celebrate that as well. Look for us next week. Unless the Angels make a big signing, we will be here to cover it for you guys. Go ahead and follow us on our social medias, X, Instagram, Facebook. Just look up Talking Halos. Follow myself on X at Jared_Tim's, Nate, and Nate Green 34. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Have a great rest of your day.